What's up, everybody, and welcome to another edition of the Links and Locks Best Bets podcast. I'm Jason Sobel from the Action Network. He is Ben Everett from the PGA Tour. And as usual, we will make 18 bets over 18 holes for this week's Zozo Championship. As a reminder, the Links and Locks podcast, proudly presented by Bet365, the world's favorite sportsbook brand. Sign up with promo code ACTION to get Bet365's exclusive sign-up offer in New Jersey and Colorado. Bet $1 on any game, get $200 free. Benny, thanks as always for joining us here on the pod. You are fresh off a week in Vegas at the Shriners Children's Open. We know how all the players fared. There's a leaderboard for that. We don't know how all the writers and broadcasters and media folks fared. So please tell us, where did you finish on that leaderboard?
I was a small contingent there this year, so I'm going to give myself top honors. I think I did pretty well. I managed to walk 36 holes the first 2 days and 18 both on the last, with extensive nighttime activities. So I give myself a pass. And look, I didn't come home with less money than I went with. We'll just say that. So that's it could have been better, but not bad.
Yeah, it definitely could have been better. You and I were doing a little victory lap on Friday morning, which is always a really bad sign. Here on the podcast last week, we each, I think it's the first time, and we get a lot of bets very similar on a regular basis. Maybe the first time we ever had the same favorite outright play here on the pod. We both went with Cam Davis, shot a 67 in the opening round, just fine, goes out Friday morning. I was actually out and about doing some things. I look, he's 1 over through 3 holes. And I go, you know what? I'm not even looking at the phone for a little while. I'm staying away from it. He proceeds to go 6 under over the next 5 holes. He's leading the golf tournament in sole possession of the lead. I text you, Benny. I go, all right, here we go. We got this. Cam Davis, we're going to win He finished the share of 37th place, Ben.
Oh, man. Yeah, look, super disappointing his weekend. He was definitely, I was saying at one point, treading water, but he was actually drowning because he was making no birdies over the weekend and guys were lapping him. Look, there are a few potential little mini reasons why he had a bit of a fade, and I am going to sort of go back to at some point in this podcast, so I'll explain what they were a bit later on. But look, I was bullish, man. I thought he was going to do it for sure, but of course, in the end, the top 2 draw cards that people were hoping would be there at the end were in Tom Kim and Patrick Cantlay, and one bad swing is all it takes in golf, right? Cantlay pulls that drive, and look, I was part of it's funny that with limited cameramen and whatnot at fall events, especially with one with limited TV window, they couldn't see where that ball went from the blimp. And I was one of the guys who helped find it. Let me tell you, the minute I saw that ball, all I could think of was, oh, the punters are not going to like this because it was wedged in there tight. But I'll say this too about Patrick Cantlay. Immediately I was having a debate with PGA Tour radio host, help me out here, your mate, the numbers guru,
Will Haskett.
Will, sorry, Will, for forgetting. Will Haskett was there, and he took a look, and he's like, oh, he's going to have to take an unplayable. And I said, well, why? I actually said, I don't think so. I think while it's almost an impossible shot, what's also an impossible shot is getting it up and down from this around anywhere within 2 club lengths. There was nothing that he could do that was going to essentially guarantee him a chance at par, and he needed a chance at par. So for Patrick Cantlay to essentially try to hack down that bush and try to get the ball out there, I think that was the only play for a person who's trying to win. Now, if it's not Patrick Cantlay, if it's a rookie or some guy in his first year thinking about his card and he realizes in that moment, I'm done here, and he wants to take the drop and then hack out and then make a 5 and finish second, different story we were talking about whether he should have been a hero or not. But in Cantlay's case, I still think the only play, even though everyone else on TV and everyone was saying he should have taken an unplayable, I don't think so. I think he had to have a crack.
Man, I completely agree with you. I started actually my preview of the Zozo Championship that you can find on the Action Network, actionnetwork.com, and the Action app, with a little breakdown of Cantlay's decision-making process. Look, we all know he hit a bad tee shot took a 3-wood off the tee, pulled it left into the desert, had a really tough lie there. At that point, though, and I think we can learn something, the gambling community that is betting on a regular basis can learn from this, because we talk about analytics all the time. You watch an NFL game and we're talking about the analytics of kick an extra point or going for 2, going for it on 4th down or punting. What that means is essentially giving yourself the best opportunity to find success. You're thinking about the implied probability. And Patrick Cantlay is a very analytical type of player. I don't know whether he's thinking in his head of percentages necessarily, but he is thinking, okay, there's 2 options. In one, I can try to get it back to the fairway and get up and down and somehow make par and force a playoff. In the other one, I take a drop and then from there have to get up and down from the desert. Which one is more likely? He took the road that had more implied probability, a greater implied probability. My contention is that on a Monday morning, even here on Monday afternoon, a lot of people are going to say, oh, Patrick Cantlay made a mess of that. He really screwed up. My contention is that the implied probability for the option he took was maybe only a 3% success rate, but the implied probability from option B, which would have been taking a drop and still hitting from the desert, was maybe a 1% implied probability. And so I do think that he made the right decision. Yes, this all could have been warmed over with just a better tee shot. He wouldn't have had to worry about it, but I don't think it was a bad decision on his part down the stretch there. So yeah, no, I do think also, Benny, that, like I said, that can help people. When you're betting, it's a matter of, hey, should I bet this player at, let's say, 9-1 or this guy at 35-1? Does the player at 9-1 have more than a 4 times chance of winning than the player who's at 35-1? We're always thinking in terms of implied probability, whether that's actually mathematically, statistically going through our mind or not. And in fact, that's a question I asked myself this week. We'll get into that as we start our Zozo Championship picks. 18 holes, 18 bets. You're on the tee, Betty. Swing away.
Yeah, made it just quite a sensational little diatribe there, mate. That's just hit the nail on the head. And I think people, if you didn't quite grasp it, go back and listen to that all over again, because that will give you a leg up in all your sort of betting sort of decisions and whatnot. And look, I think the proof was in the pudding, wasn't it? When he did eventually take a drop, he couldn't get it across the water, went in the water. Yeah, so exactly. It just proved exactly that case. All right. My first outright winner, i.e. my second pick for an outright win this week. Look, one Aussie didn't help me last week, but I'm going to another. Lucas Herbert. Plus 5,000, I think, in places about 50-1, or shop around and you'll see. I see that as tremendous value. Let me tell you why. Look, this is not one born in the analytics and numbers we just talked about. This one is born in, he's got a rocket up his you-know-what. He's fired up, this bloke. He was not happy at missing out at Quail Hollow at all. I spoke to him for the first time in person since during last week at the Shriners, where he kept sort of pushing himself towards the top of the leaderboard throughout the week before. It was basically a number of big mistakes, which you can't have in the Shriners when you need to get to 24 under. He had a few blow-up holes that really hurt him. But outside that, look, he was smashing his driver long and straight for the most part. And look, I just think that rocket he's got a point to prove. And I think he's great value at 5,000.
Well, hold off for just a minute on my long shot play of the week that I just think you can sprinkle a little bit on outright. And I'll go skip ahead straight to my Lucas Herbert play, which I have written down on my card here. As we always do, we often overlap. I'm not playing him outright. I don't mind the play. But based on everything you told me about Lucas last week, and I know you walked with him a little bit before the tournament started, he's a little fired up, like you said. And so you can get him head to head. It looks like he's right around the same number as players like KH Lee and Sebastian Munoz, 2 guys who, oh, by the way, just happened to play on that international team of the President's Cup a few weeks ago. If he's still got that chip on his shoulder, I like the Lucas Herbert play this week. That's smart.
All right, mate. Yeah, I'm gonna switch it up now after we've just talked about guys that we like. I'm gonna go with the third hole. I'm going to fade someone, or someone that I'm going to fade to potentially back later into the tournament, but starting with a fade in those matchups that you just sort of mentioned with Lucas Herbert. I'm going to fade a man that I really love, who is in hot form, and just won. Tom Kim for the first round. Now, let me tell you why. Again, this is it's a week of feel for me because I was on site last week. I was with the man for pretty much every shot he hit in this tournament, walked every hole with Tom. He is gassed. He had a cold and a bad cough and still won last week. He is really tired, but he has an obligation and feels an obligation to get out there and do the right thing. But following Japan, he has to get back to the US for his big sponsors event, CJ Cup. That one is a little higher priority for him. So I'm feeling like he's on that long plane ride overnight. He's probably feeling feeling it all. I think he might start slow in Japan. I still think he can win, but I think he's definitely going to start slow. So not worth getting on 1600 in the beginning for me at all, Tom Kim.
Very, very interesting. Good insight there, Benny. Fourth hole. I will now get to my long shot play. This is a guy I went back and looked at my preview material from a year ago, and they were at the same course, Narashino Country Club, just about an hour outside of Tokyo. And I had recommended CT Pan, who was actually a popular play, had been playing well, short golf course, which he likes. He's won on shorter golf courses in the past. He was 45-1 a year ago. He has not played his best golf recently, but boy, he has skyrocketed in a 78-man field. He is 200-1 this week. CT Pan's a world-class player. This is a guy who's been on the PGA Tour for a while now, especially on a 7,000-yard golf course. I'll take a shot on him at 200-1. Why not? I like that play, Benny.
Yeah, I mean, look, he was in this most recent President's Cup, but he was in the one before it. Definitely got some value there. All right, I'll take us to the fifth hole then. I like that pick, as we said, mate, but I'll stick with the long shot theme then. I'm looking at a guy who, again, I mentioned how Lucas Herbert was coming up and about the leaderboard there in Vegas. There's another man that was sort of threatening without threatening throughout the week, and that is Aaron Rai. Now, he's a decent number, I think, this week. You're talking like 70, 80-1, sometimes 100 if you shop around. Again, with it being a smaller field, we're not going to get those huge numbers on guys that we think can actually get it done. But Aaron Rai is a guy that, if he gets off to a hot start and he gets himself in the mix, I think he's a sneaky chance. So if you're looking for value in a small field, he's my man this week.
All right, hole number 6. I like that play with Aaron Rai. We mentioned Cam Davis off the top. We both said we're going back to him at some point. I'll go back to him with a pretty aggressive play for a top 5 finish. Look, we say it all the time, Benny. If you like a player and it doesn't work out, I think a lot of bettors tend to go, all right, he's dead to me for a while. I'm jumping off, and I'm not going to take him for at least a few months. I'm gonna let my love cool off for that player. The reality is, if you really liked the player the previous week and he didn't completely tank, didn't completely play terribly, stay on him for a little bit. There's a reason you liked him in the first place. And so we both liked Cam Davis last week. I'll play him for a top 5 this week at 7-1. We saw guys like Brendan Steele, like Keegan Bradley Hall mentioned a little bit, guys who are very good drivers of the golf ball, play well here in Japan last year. Cam Davis, I think, fits a similar profile as those players, and I like him because of that.
Well, we're close. I am going back to him. I'm going to jump to him here on the 7th hole because you've mentioned him. I have him in top 10 at 3-1. Again, as I said, he was playing great golf through 2 rounds in Las Vegas, but the weekend was a little bit of a rough one for him. Now, the parts that I saw, he did have a few drives that were just a little squirrely that upset him. But then when I did a little bit more, did a bit more digging and talked to the team a little bit, turns out that his lovely young wife was a bit crook last week. She was sick. She was at home. She was struggling a little bit. I know it doesn't sound like it should affect someone on the golf course. Crook, yeah, sick. Oh. Crook means not feeling well. Now, nothing serious. She was just, really a bit run down after all the partying and whatnot from the President's Cup, and a little cold or something got through to her. Now, Cam wasn't sick. Cam was feeling fine, he said. But at the same token, that little bit of, let's just say, other things on his mind, worried about her. She was struggling a little bit on her own for those 24, 48 hours. And I think maybe that can be enough to get a guy a little bit off kilter. And word is she's feeling better now. So he's off to Japan with a clear conscience and feeling good. And I think maybe he can ramp it back up.
Bet crook. See, we not only give you bets on this podcast, we help you speak Australian. I actually, when I tweeted out my preview for this week, I talked about a certain player that I'll get to later in the podcast here. And I said he's been on a torrid run of late. And I had a handful of people from the UK, and I don't know if this is an Australian thing too, but said, well, torrid basically means crappy. It basically is the literal translation. I'm like, I'd never heard that. And I so looked it up, and there it is. I could have used any adjective to describe this player's performance. It could have been scorching. It could have been good, I could have said. Instead, I went with torrid, and apparently, I mean, I thought there was absolutely nothing wrong about my tweet. It just shows every tweet might have something wrong with it. Someone can find fault with any one of them out there. So, in any case, I'll talk about that torrid player. The good meaning of torrid in just a minute, but on the 8th hole, I'll go with the top 10 play. It's a really good number, 8-1 on a guy who tends to play his best golf on shorter golf courses. Starting to come around, had the best tee to green numbers on Sunday in the final round in Vegas of anybody making the trip from there to Japan, and that is Joel Damon. So Joel Damon hit it well. Look, let's hope that doesn't leave him somewhere on the plane as he makes that long journey over. But at 8-1, I think that's a really good number. I think he's a solid player. Should be a good course for him.
Yeah, mate, I can see that. That's as you said, I didn't know that. I didn't look that deep in the stats in the final round there, but I'll take your word for it. And yeah, I could see that him plotting himself around there and doing decent. Like you mentioned too, behind Hideki last time were a couple of seasoned guys who played just similar golf. So we could see that again. All right, I'll close the front nine here with first round leader. And let me preface this by saying I am using this space this week with the smaller field, etc., to try to get value on the guys at the top of the board I like, at the very top of the board. And that's Sungjae Im and Xander. Now, I do not, Xander Schauffele, that is, I don't think that their numbers are worth getting outright at the beginning. It's too short. Even though I think what is it, 800 and 900 for those two at the top of the board. I think you're almost just as much chance, if not a better chance, of waiting, like we always say. And then if you want to cover yourself, why not have a crack at them on first round leader? If they do go out hot, they probably will keep going well and maybe win the tournament. So you can get 18, 16, double the mark for first round lead. I say put a little sprinkle on first round lead of those two guys. If they do, great, you've hit it. If they don't, their odds should have come out. And if they're 3 or 4 or 5 or even 6 behind after one round, that's when you look at those two guys.
The only potential issue for a live play this week, Benny, I just say this to remind people that they're playing in Japan. I think a great part of our listenership here is in the United States. If you want to jump on a guy, sure, between the second and third round, going into Saturday's round there, if you want to jump on a guy, fine. But if you're like, hey, so-and-so played the first 6 holes in 2 over, I want to jump on him now that he dropped to 25-1, whoever it might be. You better be up at 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock in the morning, ready to make these plays. And so that's the only warning symbol that I put on that, just a little bit. The fact that you might not be available and ready and willing to be betting this stuff live the entire week. As we make the turn, a reminder, the Links and Locks podcast is proudly presented by Bet365, the world's favorite sportsbook brand. Sign up with promo code ACTION, ACTION, to get Bet365's exclusive sign-up offer in New Jersey and Colorado. Bet $1 on any game, get $200 free. All right, getting back to the back nine. I've got the tee. I'm going to go with my first-round leader bet. I mentioned him tangentially earlier. Played well here last year. Keegan Bradley is a guy that I've often targeted for first-round leader bets. And in my head, Benny, he always plays well on Thursday. And I went back and looked. 79th in round 1 scoring average this past season. It was 2 seasons ago that he was 13th, and I think he was in the top 5, top 10 for most of that season. It looks like he's getting it back a little bit. In his last 3 starts, Keegan Bradley has shot scores of 68, 64, 70 in the opening round. I look for a little Thursday magic from Keegan, and the real reason I like him this week is because in 8 rounds at Narashino in his career, He has posted scores of 63 and 65. So we know he likes playing well. He can go low in the opening round. We know he can go low at this golf course. If we combine the two and we get a low one on Thursday, boom, there's your FRL at 35-1.
I was just going to say, I hadn't looked him up, but I was like, my memory serves that he had some low rounds there. So there you go. Well done. Absolutely sounds like a decent, sometimes first round leader can be that dart throw, as I said, but if you just give yourself enough good reasons to sort of have that crack, you've definitely provided some there. All right, well, here you go. I'm going to try to do some education if I can as well.
Please.
We're going to go to top 40 plays, and I'm going to use this to introduce to the listeners who may not know two Japanese players.
Oh boy,
that I feel like
we're going to overlap on this too.
Well, there's two guys at plus 100. Not many guys in the small field are getting plus money, top 40. But I'm going to go to the players that maybe they're plus 100 because not everyone knows about them, or not everyone knows that they're what they're capable of. But I'm going to start my first one. You should know his name if you've been watching golf, in recent years. But it's Kita Nakajima. Now, he was the number one amateur last year, was trending to be the number one amateur again this year, but just turned pro a little while ago. Played his first pro event last week, I believe. He played in all the majors this past year, the Masters and the two Opens. Didn't make the cut there, but I've seen enough of this kid to know that he does have the good stuff, is a potential star in the making. Might be a little bit behind Tom Kim's trajectory, but definitely could be one of those type players if he can sort of find his feet in professional golf. As I said, he's one of the guys at plus 100 for a top 40. And he was, by the way, I believe he played in it last year as an amateur and finished 28th. So he's already done that and proven he can do it. The other one I like is, and I apologize to anyone out there if I'm pronouncing this completely wrong because I have no idea how it's done, but Kato Onishi, plus 100. No one might have heard of him, but I can tell you, USC fans out here will have. He played college golf here in LA at USC and was actually the freshman of the year for the Pac, whatever it was called, in 2018. Some sort of pedigree, has played American style golf, and obviously is doing quite well. Had his first win on the Japan Tour just a few weeks ago and multiple top 10s. So there are two guys, I think, at the plus 100 for top 40 that might be worth a crack.
Benny, this whole sharing a brain thing is not working out well for either one of us. But as we say all the time on the podcast, because it always happens almost every single week, we do not talk about our plays beforehand. We barely talk about anything beforehand. I send you a text, hey, you ready to go? You say, yep, give me 5 minutes. We get on, boom, we start talking. I mean, there's no planning. There's no going back and forth and talking about players. Number 12 on my little index card right here that I've written down, Keita Nakajima, top 40, the exact same play that you came up with, all the same reasons. Look, he's playing at home. He's a former number one ranked amateur in the world. And I'm going to throw one more little stat out you. I'm looking for guys who maybe fit this golf course a little bit. Hideki Matsuyama last year won this golf tournament. A few years before that, he finished runner-up on this very same golf course. A couple months afterwards, he wound up winning the Sony Open. Nakajima finished third, right behind Hideki Matsuyama at the Sony Open. So if you're looking for a little corollary type golf course, you go from Narashino to Waialae over in Hawaii, right in Honolulu there. And maybe there's a little comparison to be made between the two. If Hideki can win it both, maybe Nakajima can contend it both. At the very least, top 40 in a 78-man field at even money feels like a really, really smart play, as you said already.
Yeah, look, and Nakajima, he's in awe of Hideki. And to be honest, that's what the one knock on him last year in this event as an amateur was that first round. He was thrown in amongst all the chaos, and either with Hideki's grip or the one right in front of it deliberately. And he had a 73 to start before finding his feet. And as I said, finishing in the top 30. He'll be clearly more ready this time around. And I expect him to do well. But I'll move on now to a top 20 play. Again, here I'm going to go with our I like to call him Rocks, Mr. Rocks and Diamonds. I thought he might have a real good shot in Shriners last week. He pushed himself up early and thought, hey, he might, upset the apple cart here. And it's not Tom Kim, it's Siwoo Kim. Siwoo Kim plus 130, I believe, for a top 20. He was T18 last year at the same course. He's playing better now than he was then. Look, is he going to have a mistake? Yeah, at some point. I remember sitting there. So at Shriners, I'm sure this probably wasn't, I don't know if this was televised or not, but he just hit the lead in the fairway on the 12th hole there at TPC Summerlin with a wedge in hand, airmails the green. Then from that spot, shanks it across the green into a pond, takes a drop, chips it back off the back of the green where he started, makes a 7, and essentially gives up all that advantage. But old Siwoo Kim, that's the end of him. Implosion, dead, done, dusted, forget him. New Siwoo Kim is telling me that he was able to come back from that. He did. He had a hole out eagle. He had another birdie. He got those shots back. How did he do it? What he learned at the recent President's Cup. The confidence he gained there, how to play under the pressure, how to stay calm in the moments where you want to, smash a club in half. He said that he feels like could be the making of his career. He's obviously had big wins already, won the Players and whatnot, but he thinks that he might be able to create some consistency in his game now based off what he learned at Quail Hollow. So I think 130 top 20 is a good bet.
It's funny. I thought you were going after my guy because I have a very conservative bet with a very similar number for a top 20 this week, but it's not Siwoo Kim. I'm going after Scott Stallings, who's playing some of the best golf of his career. Stallings has 6 top 20 finishes in his last 8 starts. That's a nice little rate of 75%. His plus 130 value there shows that the implied probability is not equal to what we have seen from him in recent months. And so I think Scott Stallings, I'm just going to keep riding that train until he shows us that we shouldn't be. So plus 130, a nice play on Stallings for a top 20. All right, we get to the 15th hole, Benny. You're up.
No, I'm going to go with the top 5 play then. My top 5. I can't believe this might be the first time that you've not mentioned him in a podcast where I'm going to. But I'm going to go back to our young gun, Sahith Theegala, 8-1. I think that there's potential for him on this course to absolutely, have one of his lights out weeks. I think that he keeps it accurate off the tee, gets out there and just starts firing at those pins with the no pressure of, there's no cut, there's nothing to worry about, nothing for him to, he's there with enjoying himself. I think we might see some vintage already. I'm saying that about a youngster, but I'm sure also he'll be energized by what Tom Kim just did. It's like these young guys are all like want to prove that they're the next thing or they're part of the new wave. And, Tom Kim just grabbed a lot of headlines for becoming the first player since Tiger to win twice before he's 21. So he'll want to get his name back on the young gun radar that he had prior to that. So plus 800, I like that for a top 5.
The one issue that I have with Theegala, it's really not an issue whatsoever. What it is he has not shown in his short career that he plays way better on long courses, short courses, wide open courses, tree line courses with this type of grass. He's essentially sort of, hey, I play well everywhere. And so that's great for him. That means great things for his future. It means he can go out there and win or contend on any kind of golf course. What it does is put a little more pressure on us, though, Benny, where we can't say, all right, it's a short course with Bermuda greens, let's go after Sahith. Or it's a long course with bent grass, that's his type of golf course. He doesn't really seem to have one type yet, at least not at this point early in his career. So he's a tough guy to try to pin down on a weekly basis. But you're right. I love him basically anytime he tees it up. I'll get to the 16th hole, and here's a guy that I'm essentially just taking across the board. Give me a little bit of the outright at 35-1. Give me a little top 5, a little top 10, just kind of sprinkling around. And that is Christian Bezuidenhout. And the reason I like Bezuidenhout this week is because we've come to know him over the last year or two as one of the game's best around and on the greens. Really good wedge player, really good putter. If you look what he's done so far this season in 2 starts, it's the irons that have actually been very good for him. He's been positive strokes gained, ball striking in each of those 2 starts, negative strokes gained around the greens and on the greens, as opposed to losing the irons and staying the same with the wedges and putter. I'm looking for him to continue the iron play, to improve his chipping and putting this week and moving forward. And I think he's got a couple of top finishes in him at some point in the not too distant future.
Yeah, I've liked him obviously even more so since the pre-cup again. I know I keep harping on it, but the proof's in the pudding. After I think I mentioned this last week, but after the 2019 President's Cup, we saw Cam Smith, Adam Scott, Mark Leishman, Sungjae Im, all win in this not too far after it. They got the boost they needed. This one, I would argue, is given some of these young guys an even bigger boost, which is why, as we've mentioned, big on Cam Davis, and guys who missed out too. We already had Mackenzie Hughes prove a point. Now I've talked about Lucas Herbert. Tom Kim's just won again. I feel like Bezuidenhout is another guy who is going to put a string together and may just jag one of these. So definitely a guy to keep an eye on while we've got some value about him. That being said, 17th hole, my outright, I'm not going with the value at all. I'm sticking with the boring, true, homegrown hero who won it again, who won it last time, Hideki Matsuyama, because it's 16-1. Like I honestly think he's a much better chance than the 8-1 Xander Schauffele, who hasn't proven on this course that he's good. Yeah, he won the gold medal in Japan, but it wasn't, tournament like this with the same level of golfers. And also he's got other things on his mind over there. He's got family and they all hang out and they do all sorts of things. So I think that's allowed us a little value on Hideki. He was runner-up, as you said, to Tiger in the first time at this course. He won last time. I think to leave him out is a little silly. So I'm going to just go down the path. Hideki 1600.
And I don't mind the play based on how well he's performed here in the past. Obviously feels at home. Obviously loves playing this golf course. What I will point out, though, is over the last 6 months, since the beginning of April, Hideki Matsuyama's results. You ready for this?
Yep.
WD 14th, 3rd, 60th, WD 4th, missed cut, 68th, WD 35th, 9th, 25th. I can't make any sense of that whatsoever. And so it doesn't mean that Hideki Matsuyama can't win. It just means I can't figure him out right now. And so I'm staying away. But
one more point I will say. The issues that he's had with his neck and back, etc., his specialist and the guy that gets the best out of him, if you will, is in Japan, and he has been with and will have that treatment in the lead up to this. And that's when he's come back and made some of those decent results you heard, usually came off the back of treatment. So look, you're right. It's a bit of a what shoot with him, how he's gone this year. But I just think that it's a pressure he feels that he turns into something good for him. Like he really feels like he has to win that event, and it's an abject failure if he doesn't. So 1 by 5 last time. I can see him at least being up there again.
Anyway, just for the record, for the listeners, I believe we are allowed to say crapshoot.
Okay,
I don't think we have to say what shoot. Okay. We get to the 18th hole. I've talked a lot on this podcast so far about implied probability, and for the most part, most weeks out of the year, if I look at a guy who's right around 9-1, and then I look at a few guys who are 35-1, I believe that the guys who are 35-1 have at least a 25% chance of winning, as opposed to that player's 9-1. I'm probably not explaining it as well as I should be, but you think about the percentages. So if they've got a price that's 4 times bigger, are they more than a quarter likely to win this golf tournament? In 80 to 90% of circumstances, I know I'm throwing a lot of numbers out there, I will say yes to that. This week, I'm taking the shorter number. We've seen a couple of stars already win on this golf course. 2019, Tiger Woods. Last year, Hideki Matsuyama. I'm not going far down the board, and I'm going with a guy who hasn't finished outside the top 15 in his last 6 starts, which includes 3 runner-up finishes. Sungjae Im at 9-1. is playing some of the best golf of his life. And we talk about being motivated by Tom Kim. You mentioned it, Benny, for Thigala. Sungjae Im is a guy who's from the same country. He's Korean. He was supposed to be the next big thing from Korea. He still might be. Right now, Tom Kim is getting all the attention. It's not like Sungjae's an old guy and over the hill. He's only 24 years old. I think if anything's going to motivate him, it was what happened in Vegas this past weekend.
Yeah, mate, you're right. As I said, when I mentioned him earlier, I just thought the 9 was a little low. So I wanted to wait out that first round and potentially put him at first round leader. But honestly, I would not be surprised if Sungjae went wire to wire. In speaking in the broken English I could get with him after his round on Sunday, you could see he was very proud of Tom, but motivated himself. He's like, and he was there for him on the 18th or the 72nd hole on the 18th green. Congratulate him. They are a little brotherhood, definitely getting the best out of each other. But Tom's got the bragging rights right now. He literally took Sungjae's title off him. Like, Sungjae won Shriners the year before, and he was joking with him about, you're just going to send the trophy to my house, that sort of thing. So that sort of thing was pretty cool. And it was just a number that, if I was looking at no numbers, I would have said Sungjae as well.
Yeah. So we'll see. I do think it's going to be one of those guys who's a little bit shorter as opposed to going to the long shot this week. Thanks so much to everybody out there for listening to this edition of the Links and Locks Best Bet podcast presented by Bet365, as it is every single week. And just like every other week, find us wherever you find your favorite podcast. Download, subscribe, rate, and listen. For Ben Everill, I'm Jason Sobel. Good luck with all your bets for this week's Zozo Championship. Here's hoping you hit the green.